Brought to you by Telehelping, a virtual assistant staffing company for professionals.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Hall. I'm the host of The Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People Too, and the founding CEO of Telehelping, a virtual staffing organization, and the herein sponsor of my podcast. So I appreciate you, Telehelp, for allowing me the opportunity to hang out with great folks like Terri. Terri, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Cody. Great to be here and to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, it is. It is a great day, and happy Wednesday.
Wednesday.
I know that they say they say oftentimes don't mention the day or the calendar event that's taking place during podcasts because it dates the actual episode. I'm not that person who cares too much about that. So
Okay.
that's not me. And so I'm really excited. You are right. I get to talk with someone in the financial space immediately after tax, which is basically like it's the first moment you have after holding your breath, coming up from air in the pool. You're like, wow. Or if you're like Katy Perry getting off the Blue Origin and kissing the ground yesterday. So there's another
Cool.
current event for you.
That was cool.
Well, Terri, before we digress way too far, I'd like to know, and I'm sure the listeners would as well, who is Terri? Tell us.
Well, thanks, Cody. So my name is Terri Spath. I am the founder and chief investment officer for Zuma Wealth, LLC. We're a wealth management financial advisory firm. And before you yawn and click off this podcast, I tried to make it more interesting. I really founded this firm. It's a firm by women for women, because a lot of times I found in my career that a lot of women felt overwhelmed, overlooked, underserved in their financial lives. And I really understand that. So that's why I created Zuma Wealth. Zuma is a beach here in Malibu where we're headquartered. I live in Malibu very intentionally. It's a wonderful place with beautiful beaches, great hiking. I'm a real outdoorsy person. I love doing all of those things. And so that's where we're based. And I love being outside. I love exercise, and I love working with people to help them learn more about money and how to make great decisions about that.
Wonderful. I love Malibu. I used to spend my weekends driving up and down the PCH. And so
Great. We'll come back. We'd love to have you again.
Well, so my wife and I used to live in Culver City, and it was very nice. Loved California. When I was getting ready to do an exit, I didn't want to give what would be a small family, single home family house versus the taxes towards the great state of California. So I wanted to keep all those taxes. So I moved to Nevada.
You're not the only one. You're not the only one. I think there's signs in Nevada that say "Go back to California."
Which we
don't like. Maybe you didn't see them when you drove through.
I was never really much of I was very Californian, though not a Californian. It was so funny when I first moved to California. I was in the military, and everyone's like, "Well, where are you from? You're not from here." Because I had a very thick-ish North Carolina accent. And then when I moved back to North Carolina, they're like, "Where are you from? You're not from here." And so no one wants me. I'm just a chameleon.
Oh, that's not true. Everyone wants you.
Now I live most of my time in Mexico, and which I'd never get mistaken for being Mexican. So there's that.
Especially when you're speaking Spanish.
Well, actually, my Spanish is quite good. I speak it well, if I want to go with the proper English. I was just buying tortas, which is a sandwich from Jalisco here in Vegas. And when I ordered in Spanish, the people behind, they started laughing at me. And generally they're not laughing at me because I'm speaking Spanish. They're laughing at me because my Spanish actually is pretty good.
Oh, good. So, well, nobody's doing that to me. That's for sure. I've worked on it, but I'm not where I want to be.
Well, but that's great though. I think I've started trying to learn Spanish far before I owned a Mexico-based company, just because I never thought in my life I'd learn another language. It was always like something that was just elusive to me, because really I wasn't that great of an English student either. And so the idea of learning another language when I could not even do my language that well was far beyond me.
That's awesome.
Well, it's great. Malibu. Are you from Malibu originally? I mean, Malibu is beautiful. I mean, everyone here, I'm sure, listens and knows where Malibu is. It's a famous location. But have you always lived there, or are you from another part?
I have not always lived here. Like you, I've kind of bounced around a little bit. My parents were high school sweethearts at Pelham Manor High School, which is in Westchester County, just out of New York City. So that's where I was, originally from. All my cousins are there, my aunts and uncles, my grandparents were there. So I feel very at home in the New York area. But we bounced around a little bit. We moved to the Chicago area. We were in Atlanta for a little while. And then my parents ultimately brought us all out to San Diego. My father went from big corporate pharmaceutical world to a small startup in San Diego. And so that's how we ended up here. I've lived in a couple places in California. I found that as much as I love the East Coast, New York City, like energy and vibe and excitement, and feel very comfortable there, that where my heart is here in California, where kind of the lifestyle is wonderful. There's a really healthy focus. I've lived in San Francisco when I worked for Franklin Templeton. I worked for a large firm that was based in Santa Barbara for a while, and ultimately made my way down to Santa Monica. And it was during COVID that I made the pivot to, hey, I'm not working for someone else anymore. I've had enough experience with this. And I'm not commuting. I don't want to commute anymore. A number of reasons. And also I felt like there was a big segment of people in my industry that weren't being served. That's women in particular. And so I was living here in Malibu. Again, I feel like you self-select to this town. We're close to Los Angeles and everything that offers, but we're like 1,000 miles away in another way. And that, it's wide open. I can walk out my door and hit hiking trails. I can, just drive down the hill and be at a beach. I've gotten into swimming this year. I've always considered myself a swimmer. And I found last year at the end of the year, when it's sort of like you're reflecting on the year and like, what should I do? How can I improve? I was like, I consider myself a swimmer, but I'm not getting in the pool. So at the start of this year, I made a goal. I'm going to swim 100 miles in 2025. And I was like, that's pretty manageable. Just swim like 2 miles a week and I'll hit 100 miles. And then, we had a huge fire, the Palisades fire, really impacted things. It got really cold. It was rainy. I didn't want to get in the pool a lot of the time. But when you're in a town that's really focused on health and wellness, I found that I kept getting in the pool. So I'm up to just over 31 miles. So I have 69 to go. So I'm right on track.
You're on track.
Long answer to say I'm not originally from here, and but I feel like I belong in this spot because of the lifestyle, and it affords me, to have this business, but also have the lifestyle that that is most important to me, which is health. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're not healthy, there's nothing you can do about it.
You've said a couple really great things, and I'm a big health person. I avoid sugar, like the craze, and everyone always, like my wife being one of them, being a Mexicana is one thing. Mexicans they love sugar, and so for me, I mean, right? Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. Our bodies are designed to enjoy it. I just, I avoid it because it's in everything, and so it does take a certain conscious. I'm the type of person who focuses on what I do. At the end of the day, I go off, I exercise, I go to my Orange Theory. And then I go from Orange Theory to I play a couple hours of tennis most days of the week. And so, right. And that's what, yesterday I was playing tennis and my wife started having contractions. I was on like a 3-set streak. I was like
match point.
I was killing it. And I look at my phone. I was like, oh, gotta go. But
I love tennis. I watch a lot of tennis. There's a great tennis tournament in Indian Wells, about a couple hours close to Palm Springs area. That's wonderful. So much fun to go to. So Cody, I have to ask, pickleball, where's pickleball rank in your?
Pickleball ranks it's not even on my ring. I don't pickle the ball, right? I get asked that like all the time, actually. I don't pickleball. I just, my knees are still good. And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
despite, despite trying to make them not good,
Exactly.
through military and everything, it just, I have my mobility still, and I'm very conscious of keeping things like my twitch muscles and body very active. I do exercises that engage different muscles that oftentimes we don't, which is one thing I appreciate about Orange Theory. Shout out to the OT, is the fact that they make you do exercises that you don't often do, which focus a lot on balance, which make your muscles that support knees, shoulders, ankles stronger, keeping them where they need to be so you avoid injury. And so,
100%,
yeah,
Cody. I'm so
yeah,
glad that you said that. And I just have to chime in on the balance thing. That's something that I've learned more recently, how important it is
mhm,
to keep your feet strong, all those slow twitch muscles that you're talking about. There are some statistics I've looked at recently that show, a lot of our clients tend to be kind of 50s, 60s, and they're going to be in their 70s and 80s and hopefully beyond. And you want to be healthy at that age. And if you fall
mhm,
past the age of, I want to say it's 80, but even if it's before that, but if you fall because your balance isn't great and you haven't worked on all these things when you're your age or my age, your mortality rate within a year is up to 30%. It's a
yeah,
shocking, horrible number. And it's been my mantra since reading that statistic of how important it is to focus on the things that you just talked about, and you can look, get them through Orange Theory, practicing balance, all those things, because you absolutely don't want to fall as you get older. Because like kind of like I said, it doesn't matter if you have money. If you fall and
correct.
break something, it's not your mortality is significantly higher. It's really shocking, even if you're a healthy person. It's not
Well,
good.
it's something I live all the time. My grandmother
Good.
is 87, and she constantly falls, unfortunately. And so
Oh, really?
it's one of those things that my grandmother raised me and my brother, so she's more like my mother. And so for us, we live with the reality that one day that fall could be the last fall, because all it takes is a hip, and if you've never been injured, it's hard to understand, but I got injured quite extensively in the military. And when you're injured, and to a way that is almost, it does change the way you live your life, you wonder, are you going to be able to get back to where you were? And it reminds me of a short that I saw yesterday, and it was, you're either healthy or you're not. All right. And if you're healthy, you have no problems. But if you're not healthy, you have two problems. Are you going to get better or are you going to get worse? If you're going to get better, then you have no problems. But if you're going to get worse, you have two more problems. Are you going to keep getting sicker or are you going to die? And so if you're not going to keep getting sicker, you have no more problems. If you're going to die, you have two problems, right? Are you going to go to heaven or are you going to go to hell? And if you're going to
Yeah.
go to heaven, then you have no problems. But if you're going to go to hell, you have two problems: crispy or extra crispy. And so it was hilarious.
They're both
Uh,
bad. You don't want either of
but
them.
essentially,
They're both
you
bad.
have more problems if you don't have health. And it's slowly, we use the word cascade in many respects. You have cascade investments, you have cascade events. Generally, cascade means it just continues to fall, fall, fall. And that's how health is, it starts off by, people say, well, if you don't eat well, you're not healthy. Well, yes, if you are an active person and eat well, you have two really good things going for you. If you're not an active person and you eat well, good. But if you don't eat well and you're not active, bad, right? And so you can be two things, but if you're not at least one and you're none of them, if you're just a couch sitter, I could not imagine what my life would be like if after I got done working all day, I just went back home and sat on the couch every day of the week. Sometimes I do, because wow, days can be
Right.
long,
Yeah,
but
no,
but not
exactly. I mean,
always.
you're preaching to the choir on this, and I didn't know this about you, Cody. So this is so fascinating. And my partner at Zuma Wealth happens to be a PhD in exercise physiology and nutrition. And he's constantly educating me as well
Wow.
as our clients, as well as everyone we know about exactly what you just said. That you need both. You need to eat well, you need to stay away from sugar, like you said. You need to work on your balance, on your cardiovascular health in terms of endurance. I mean, he really walks the walk. You know,
Mhm.
he's maybe you should have him on as a guest as
I would
well.
love to. Absolutely.
He's done more than 25 marathons. He's done the Ironman distance, triathlon 4 times in Hawaii. He rode his bike across America and came in 5th place in like
Wow.
something like under 6 days or 7 days. I should know
Wow.
this, but he also, you know, is. And I always thought, well, I just exercise really well, and so I can eat whatever I want. That's not the case, is what I've learned.
Correct.
It's exactly what you said. You need to be really nutritious as well, because you're feeding your brain, you're feeding your health, and if you fill that with poison, you know, it can help, it can, you know, weigh on your memory in the future. It can hurt your heart health in the future. And, you know, the importance of health is so complex. And it sounds like you've studied a lot. Thank you for your service in the military. And it sounds like you were drawn to that because you were a fit, active, healthy person. And that just, you know, went on overdrive, it seems, when you
it's like
joined the
life. It's like
military.
a life path, you know, and I think that it's great that you work in the wealth management world, because health and wealth, right? They are very similar. I mean, if you
Yeah,
were to take
100%.
away the top layer of one being about your overall body's well-being and one of them being about your overall financial well-being, the path of those two things could be very, very much the same, you know. Those who are healthy and fit, because it's an intention. They're doing it intentionally. They're putting
Exactly.
a thought process into it. And oftentimes those decisions they're making aren't easy decisions. I don't want to go to the gym every day, right? I don't, like, you know, I do want to play tennis every day, but I don't want to go to the gym every day. And sometimes when I do play tennis, if it's too windy or too hot, I still play, but it's
Exactly.
not the perfect environment. Much like you talking about the swimming, you know, if we got fires coming in, you have rain coming in,
Mhm.
but you're still on track, because
Still
if it
win.
were easy, we'd be living in a world full of healthy, wealthy people. So, but
I
we're,
love that.
but it's not.
It's not. And we really do focus on that intersection between wealth and health, because my partner is so fluent in all of these topics and so inspiring, frankly. And
Mm,
I like to think the same in the wealth category. And it's a lot of the same thing, you know, with money. You know, it's not always easy decisions to make, whether it's, you know, not spending as much, or, you know, not panicking and exiting the markets when they're ugly and painful. You know, there's having that discipline and in both your personal health life as well as your wealth life. You know, healthy wealth and wealthy health, we like to say. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a message that we're trying to bring to as many people as possible.
I love it. And I think that, you know, once I had a corpsman, a special operations corpsman, which is like basically a trauma nurse for the special operations team. And he used to always, like, before like a patrol or before we set out, he used to always say, you know, once more into the fray, once more we go into the unknown. And like the idea is that, you know, there's always going to be a lot of things that are challenging and scary, right? But you still have to step outside that door, right? You still have to go into it. And, you know, the market, you know, like you just said, it's been very scary lately.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if in my lifetime we'll get to witness this again. And, you know, I trade every morning from the time of usually between 6:30 and 7, but sometimes like today I had a whole hour to trade. And I have risk gauges that tell me, you know, basically I measure slippage on the, you know, how things are my options decaying quicker than they normally decay, or is the bid and ask, are they so wide where you don't really know where you're going to fall in between if you try to place an order? Very crazy, you know. But
Yeah.
trading in this environment it's very scary, and you know, there's lots of money to be made. It's awesome. I've done really well, and I'm one of probably the few people who are coming out dramatically on top of all this. However, I like it when it's easier.
Yeah.
However, you know, there are days where I lose money and it doesn't, and the next day I go, I'm like, all right, well, let's do this again, right? 6:30 bell rings, time to step back into the ring. And I think that's, you know, the same thing we can look at poor or mistakes with our money is the same way we can look at falls in health or
Yeah.
injuries in health,
Yeah. Great
uh,
parallel.
and you being able to, like, sometimes you step on a ball and roll your ankle playing tennis. And I've been the person there. I've touched my ankle to the floor, right? And I
Oof.
felt it, and I've broke my ankle before. And so, skydiving, but not tennis playing. But and I've had those injuries, and it's like, and they suck to have, but like, what can I take from this? How can I fix it? And how am I going to get back into the motion of things in a healthy way? And I think that's, a really great way to steer the ship is people have made a lot of money mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Even people, and I'm not talking about people with a lot of money, people with a little bit of money, both folks, right?
Yeah.
I've made poor $100,000+ mistakes in investments. It happens. But sometimes it impacts people's ability to want to continue on.
Right. I mean, that is actually, so yeah, one of the big things that we offer is kind of guardrails, exactly what you were talking about when you're saying you're trading and you're looking at the decay of your options. And it sounds like you have sets of rules, as do we. Sets of rules for like, okay, this is when we buy, this is when we sell, this is when we hold on, and trying to, stick to those in those tough environments, because, if you can lose less, then you start at a better place going forward. And one of the other things that we've really noticed with women, one of the mistakes we have seen over and over is that this, exactly what you sort of touched on, is kind of wanting to step away and being like really comfortable. Like, I've got all this cash sitting here and I'm really comfortable because I can see it in the bank and I can see how much it is every day, and not putting that into more productive use over time. It's a massive mistake. Huge mistake. It's one of the biggest mistakes that we've seen over and over again. It's just like too much money sitting on the sidelines because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel safer. And it doesn't over time do anything for you. And what you give up is just tremendous. So if you can have kind of some rules, like you said, about guardrails, about, losses, preventing losses, and making sure you're sticking with winners and not avoiding the ability to grow wealth through investing, you can do a lot better over time. We try to educate people on that a lot too, just like you're talking about. So,
well, Terry, you make a really good point, because I am that person. I was raised by a Great Depression era woman.
yeah,
And so, man, I can make $1 and save $1.50.
yeah,
And I'm so very frugal, right? But I have a rule, because I love when you look at your bank account and you have money. You're like, oh, I feel safe, right? Telehelping could crash today and I could not work and I'll be like fine for a while. And that makes me feel really safe. And that's a good feeling to have. But what helped me is understand, well, what is that number? Right? I'm like, what is that number that I need in my savings account or in my checking account to make me feel comfortable? And at what point in time beyond that would just be excess? And so I set that amount, and when I have more than that, I cascade it into investments. I have a running list of things that either I want to get involved in, investment wise, and or ones that are hypothetical, like riskier ones. And so, but I like to do investments that are giving. I love annuities. I want something that's going to pay me every month. And so, like, I like, whether it's businesses or investments that have some type of payout on a quarterly or monthly basis. And so I like the reoccurring income. So I take everything over that amount and I put it into things. My wife jokes about this all the time with me. She's like, if Cody had $3 billion, 2.9 billion of it would probably be going back into investments. And it's helped me get to 7+ passive incomes that I don't have to work for every month. And so they just happen without me touching anything, because I've taken the mentality is like, okay, savings is important. I need liquidity to pay for things.
100%.
However, I have to put myself into the ring on certain things, and they don't work out sometimes, right? It happens. But I take those chances because
Part of it.
I wouldn't have I live such a relaxed lifestyle because I've made so many good mistakes. And so, right,
That's a great tagline, because I've made so many mistakes. And I think it's not making the same mistake twice.
correct.
You learn. It doesn't mean you never lose
Correct.
money, but meaning you learn from those mistakes so that you can have such a relaxed life, because you've got, okay, I've done that one, I've made the mistake, I learned from it, this is how I'm gonna do it differently.
Very much so.
Sounds like what you're doing, and I think that's a great, entrepreneurial mindset, just personal mindset for anybody. And, it's
Well,
mindset is everything.
Well, I think you caveat, and I have follow-up questions regarding the clients you serve because you spoke about women. Are the women who are holding this money, are they oftentimes without partner, without husband, or are they oftentimes by themselves where they're sitting here like, got to have my money saved to make me feel comfortable, or are there different circumstances? What's that?
Sometimes. That's an interesting question. We actually did a market research study on this. This is where I kind of discovered this, I guess, shortfall. And the study was affluent, educated women. So we wanted, we didn't want women. We want to help all women, but we wanted to focus on like, hey, if they've already had like some great education and they've got like enough money, what are they doing? And what we discovered, one of the biggest things, like we just talking about, is just holding too much cash, and that we saw it across the board with. Primarily, the survey had women that were on second marriages. So they had money that they, maybe made themselves. Maybe they'd gotten out of their first marriage and were keeping separately for their own kids. But we also saw this with women who are widowed. And there's, maybe suddenly making the decisions all by themselves, and they need to feel safe. We pretty much saw it across the board, to be honest, as a general gender thing, which I hate to say because I always fight these sort of what seem like stereotypes, but what we consistently saw is that women were holding too much cash on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. And, and not saying like, okay, exactly what you just said. I've got this bucket that I need, but the rest of it needs to be more productive. It doesn't need to sit in a CD at the bank making 4% when I can make double that over time. And that, the growth in wealth is fabulous if you've got it invested properly, and it's dead if you don't. So yeah, we saw it kind of across the board.
And it's a big thing because I myself, after my first marriage, when my first marriage had all my income combined, and when that fell apart, so did all my income. So it was a very tragic young mistake.
Very painful.
And what saved me was, hilarious enough, was money I didn't even know I had. And so I had money in a military checking account with USAA that I forgot I had. It was perfect. I had like a military bonus or something go there. And I know that it may sound ridiculous that I forgot that I had thousands of dollars in a bank account, but I had it. And, it helped me restart my life. And because my first marriage, like I'm sure plenty of people listening, most of our folks between the age of 25 and 35 on here. So if you're in that age, you're probably already survived your first divorce, some of you. And if you haven't, you avoided your first divorce. Good job. And so that happens. And the truth of the reality is I had to rebuild my entire life, and it helped me. And so I was happy that I had this little bit of income. I don't intentionally keep money off to the side now because I've gotten way smarter about how I approach my relationships. And so now there's a mutual understanding in all regards. And for those who don't understand the lining, it's prenuptial agreements, right? And so, but things can happen, and it puts people in a scared position where they have to hoard money because maybe they had a tragic incident like I did where she tried to take the shoes off my feet.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. And it happens to people that don't even see it coming, so it's, being properly prepared for all situations, and also knowing that you can survive them and that you can get out of them, just like you're showing your huge success now. And you're expecting your third baby any second.
Correct. Now I got
this great podcast and this great business, and you're living the dream in Mexico, that a place that, I would be if I could figure that one out. But,
and Terri, that's what I think you help folks understand, and people who are listening here, who some of which may be a future client of yours, is understand that telehealth didn't start. Your company didn't start because it was easy, right? I didn't take a dollar out of telehealth for the first 2 years. And basically, It was a full-time free job. And so, and like yourself, you were success in this world, and you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this on my own. It wasn't with assurance. It's like, well, I know if I make this decision, it's all going to work out well. It wasn't 100% probability,
Yeah.
but you still went into it. And I think that's something I'm sure that you have to help a lot of your clients do, is kind of understand the risk, right? But also, get over the hurdle of fear.
Yeah, fear limits a lot of things. And you kind of touched on something interesting. Like I worked for big companies. I had a steady paycheck. I had benefits, and I never really thought of myself, to be honest, as like an entrepreneur who was gonna. I should say I had like a little seed in the back of my mind, but I never really thought that was something that I could get over the fear, frankly, of stepping out and doing. And that's a message I think I want to give to your audience as well, is like, even if you think like I don't have what it takes to take a dream and try it. Yeah, have there been speed bumps and pay cut at the beginning and things like that? Yes, they have, but I have to say, like, that's the direction that I feel totally is the right one for me, and probably for others out there that sometimes feel stuck in a place that they're at,
Yeah.
and are thinking about something different.
And I think that's a great way, because we have a lot of folks who watch that are identified as like the hustler culture, other than lawyers, accountants, and other wealth advisors who follow the channel. But a lot of these folks who have hustles, and a hustle's a hobby that makes money, right? Someone messaged me on LinkedIn the other day, which I thought was hilarious, and they're like, "Oh, we want to talk about your hustle, your podcast," and I was like, "Oh, my hustle." I was like, "That's a hobby," and so. Right. It's a 9 a.m. hobby that I do to start my day off. But yeah, sure, we can call it a hustle. I'm not the person who identifies hustle to everything that makes a dollar. But for those out there who are running actual hustles, a lot of them are on that decision break. They probably have a great salary job, making great money. I was making great money before I started my first business. Like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with all that money, and it was great. But then I was like, oh, I'm doing this thing on the side, right? This thing would be really cool to like be in charge of myself. And then I always, opposite of you, where I always wanted to work for myself, because I was like, wow, I work for idiots. And I kept, every day I was like, wow, these people are stupid. And I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna work for someone who's an idiot, I'm gonna be that idiot.
Be
Right.
that idiot.
The only idiot I'm going to work for is me. And so
Yeah.
and I made that decision, and
Yeah.
then it was so scary to like leave
Yes.
my job.
Yep.
But there's always this thing that my former vice president said at Apple to me, and he always used to tell me to burn the boat. And at first, I didn't understand what he was talking
I
about.
don't either.
And I was like, "What do you mean burn the boat?" Eugene Lucky, what a great guy. And he said, "Just burn the boat." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Listen, when Vikings used to invade a foreign country, they would land on the shore and they'd burn their boat, because at that point in time, they had no exit. There was no retreat. They were either going to conquer or they were going to
Cool.
die." And so he
Yep.
said, burn the boat. And I didn't get
Burn
that
it.
for many years. I always kept my foot in the boat. All right. And I always would do things on the side, make passive side investments that were, as low risk as they possibly be, but also the low risk reflected the return on them, because that was also low gain. And eventually I was just like, let's burn this boat. Scariest thing I've
Burn
ever
the
done.
boat, man. Eugene
Right.
Lucky.
And
I love it.
right. 10 years later, Eugene was right. I was like, oh, okay. And I think that's what a lot of folks need to do with their investments. A lot of us are sitting around with cash in our pockets, and whether you're sitting on $50,000 or $500,000, right? And you're asking yourself, well, I have good amount of money saved. I feel comfortable. Like, once you feel comfortable, you have to ask yourself, like, how am I going to get to the point where I'm going to not have to work every day for somebody? Because not everyone's an entrepreneur, and that's okay. If you're not an entrepreneur and you're listening, that's completely fine. Not everyone's set out to be in a constant state of torture like entrepreneurs are. And so not everyone's meant to get beat up every day. But if you doesn't mean you're not meant for retirement, right?
Yeah.
And doesn't mean you're not meant for an early retirement. We constantly confuse, oh, I have a 401k. I'm getting ready for retirement. Great that you have a 401k, but that's the tip of a pencil.
Yeah, you need more. You need more, and you need a plan, and you need to, and frankly, if you want to work less for somebody else, if you're being better, making better decisions with your money, then you can, because it's, that's like you said, for retirement or for whatever you want to picture that is. Some people hate that word, and they're like,
correct.
How about for like not working for somebody else every day and like slogging down the freeway to go into a cubicle or whatever it is, if you're making the right decisions with your finances, particularly if you start, if there's people, if you start in your 20s just socking it away, man, it is like, it turns into a hockey stick over time, because that money that you've saved makes money, and then you're making money on a bigger nest egg, and you're not even, I think I forgot to mention this in the intro, but like I got into this focus of investing when I was probably in middle school, and my dad like taught me about compound interest. He showed me something. He's like, I put this money in, this is going to be for your college, and it's going to grow at this rate so that when you go, it's going to be worth this much. And I was like, what? You mean I don't have to do anything? Like I don't have to work? Like it's going to probably be worth more in the future just because we put it here now. I mean, it was just like light bulb. And I think that, when you remind yourself of that, and especially the younger you are, just like really understanding that, like just put it aside, invest it, and you'll have more in the future. That's the secret of investing and just a wealthy, healthy later years in life, whatever you want to call it, doing whatever you want to be doing instead of what you don't want to be doing.
And no, Terry, and I think that's the biggest thing, if people are listening and you love the way your life's going, right, and you want it to stay that way every day, then great, keep doing what you're doing. But understand that it probably is that way because you actively work every day. And so you have to start thinking earlier than not, how do I replace my own income so that I can achieve what I want eventually? Because we're all going to, our utility is going to decrease over time. It happens to all of us, whether it's by way of energy, by way of health, something's going to take place. We have to be prepared for that moment, whether it's age, injury, or health, that's going to create an inability for us to maintain our current level of income, right? And so you have to ask yourself, what am I doing to prepare for that day, right?
Exactly.
That day could be what I refer to as a living retirement. Right? I've taken 2 years off before, so I understand what living retirement is. It's great. I also need something to do, which is why I'm back here today. But at the same time, like you may want to be that person who stops working at 45 or 55 or 65 or whatever age. You may never want to stop, but you also want to not need to continue doing it. And that's why you have to start now. And so, Terry, as we gear towards the downside of this recording, I want to, start understanding is for those folks who listen, is which hilarious enough, 50 or like 49 and change of our audience is female. And so it identifies as female. So there's a lot of folks who listen because most of our episodes see at least 1,000 views. And so of the 500 folks listening out there, we know you focus on women, but when do they know that reaching out to you is the time, and how do they know that they're the right person to reach out to you? Tell us about that type of person so they can say, well, I need to reach out to Terry.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we learned in this research study that we did when we launched the firm, we had a great market research firm that talked to, these smart, sophisticated, well-educated women that, and, the one thing we learned, like we talked about a lot, is too much cash on the sidelines. But the other thing that we learned is that at least in this study, and I think it extends, is a lot of women really want to learn about this. They want to be educated. They want to make the right decisions. But they also feel like they need more understanding and more education about, like, maybe concepts like we just talked about compounding interest. You sort of hear it and you're like, it's good, but you don't really see it on a chart to understand like how powerful it is. Or they want to understand what you were touching on about creating like a regular income. Maybe it means not working in the future. Maybe it means helping out a kid. Maybe it means like supporting a certain cause that's near and dear to their heart. But what we really found is that a lot of women really want to learn about these concepts, but they're not comfortable making kind of the bigger decisions until they have a better understanding. And so I think the best time to reach out to me or to anyone, there's plenty of information out there, but I'm, pretty well educated in all this at this stage of my career, and with all the credentials and education that I insisted on getting for myself. I think anytime is great to reach out, anytime. And what we found is that, women really want to learn. And I'm sure the guys do too. I don't mean to say that they don't, but what we really found is that this drive and thirst for education and understanding is really there. And I don't think my industry does a great job of providing that education. I think we're a little bit opaque and difficult and intentionally complex. And that's another problem I'm looking to solve. So, it's like getting that information, making sort of complex concepts simple is something that I really focus on doing, and that I think really is, makes it helpful. And so to answer your question, I think anytime is great, because really, the first stage is understanding and education and making sure that all the concepts are clear. And that's something we're happy to do at any time, and that we encourage anyone and everyone, not just women, but especially women who are thirsty for information, to learn about these concepts and not, step away because it seems intentionally complex unnecessarily.
No, I love that. And Terri, thank you so much. And for those who want to reach out to Terri, you can contact them on Zuma's Wealth webpage, which we'll have linked in here as a pop-up on the video. And likewise, if for some reason you aren't able to find the webpage, which it's okay, we're here for you. You can always email us at info@thefacespodcast.com, and one of my team members will make sure that you get in contact with Terri via email. So thank you so much for those who've listened. Terri, I appreciate you and your time today, especially in tis be the season of taxes. And I hope you have a great rest of your week, and let's get that 100 miles.
Thanks. Thank you.
Be well, ma'am. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.